You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface and Jake Wallis-Simons, editor of the Jewish Chronicle. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. The Telegraph leads with the story about one of Brianna Ghey's murderers. It reports that 16-year-old Scarlett Jenkinson had a lust for fame and was obsessed with serial killers. Brianna Ghey's killers also make the front page of the Daily Express. Their identity now revealed, with the judge saying their motives were driven partly by transphobia. The Daily Mail leads with words from Brianna's mother about her daughter's killers. Eddie Ratcliffe was motivated by hate and Scarlett Jenkinson killed for fun. The Daily Mirror's headline, Pure Evil, the words used by Brianna's father to describe her killers. It's also the main story on The Guardian tomorrow. The headline reads, Exceptionally brutal, teens jailed for murder. The Eye Weekend leads with pressure the Chancellor is facing to announce income tax cuts in his spring budget. The FT Weekend reports US job growth figures for January were almost twice those that were forecast, with economists left speechless by what they've described as stunning numbers. The search for a suspect wanted over a chemical attack and the Home Office approving his asylum claim is on the front of the Times. Its headline, Outcry over asylum for suspect in Alkali attack. And on the front of the Daily Star, a story about the price of love, apparently. It'll cost you £9.67 a day. Don't know exactly what that's for. We shall find out. A reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Susie Boniface and Jake Wallis-Simons. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us. A story which I wasn't sure that many of the papers would be able to pick up on in time, but these are the strikes in Iraq and Syria that the US has launched tonight in retaliation, Jake.
Yes, I mean, the US had to respond after three of its servicemen or servicemen and women were killed in a strike on the border of Jordan and Syria a few days ago. So it had to retaliate. But it strikes me that these strikes, as powerful as they are and as long-lasting as they will be, it seems that this is just the first wave. They're not on Iran itself, and that's a crucial decision being made by the Biden administration. And really it shows that a reluctance to get drawn into anything heavier, which you can understand, a keenness to avoid escalation, but at the same time, it's being drawn into Iran's game, which is to use these proxy militia to do the Ayatollah's bidding without any pain absorbed by the Iranian regime itself. And in the past, America has attacked Iran itself with some quite good results. There was the killing of Soleimani, which Trump authorised in 2020. Everyone thought there'd be World War III then. There wasn't. It sort of tamed the Iranian threat temporarily. As far back as 1988, President Reagan did a similar thing by attacking the Iranian Navy, which precipitated the end of the Iran-Iraq war. So I think that really Biden, if he wants to really cause Iran to draw in its horns, needs to start thinking about attacking various targets in Iran itself.
Mm. Well, we heard specifically from Lloyd Austin, the US Secretary of State for Defence, yesterday that we are not at war with Iran. That was very, very plain. And in the past, we've also known that that's not something that America wants and not particularly something that Iran wants.
Well, let's back up a minute here. The reason that these missile strikes have been happening in the Gulf is because Iran has funded them and because it's come out of October the 7th and the massacre in Israel. And the massacre in Israel was done by Hamas, which was funded and supplied by Iran. And Iran, in that region, is one of the countries which has absolutely refused to discuss trade or further development with Israel, and which is so ragingly anti-Semitic, it wants to create a war with the West about Israel. It wants to draw that whole area into a massive conflict. That's why it's seeding these terror groups around the region. And so far, it has got everything it wants. It has got Joe Biden dealing with the symptoms, with the Houthis, with this thing happening in Syria and stuff like that. Too frightened to take on Iran itself, because that would just blow it up into a massive conflict. It's got us talking about how if you can solve Israel and Palestine and get some kind of a treaty or a ceasefire there, that would mollify Iran and things would calm down. And it wouldn't. Iran still has a huge problem with Israel even existing. If you mollify Iran, it's simply a form of appeasement. And so I fear that what you're actually getting here is Iran has everything it wants. It's getting everything it wants. It's getting this kind of increased conflict and causing huge headaches for the West. And what it always wants is something more. It wants more of a fight all the time. And it's going to have to be dealt with, and it's going to be horrific.
Do you think that Iran actually wants America to attack?
The Iranian people don't. The Iranian people protest their government.
But the government, you think the government does?
The people who run Iran very much would benefit from any kind of attack, whether you're attacking the Houthis, whether you're attacking in Syria, whether you're attacking Iraqi insurgents, whether you're attacking Iran itself. They benefit and they can exploit it.
I mean, also, I think people don't understand the mentality of the regime and the theology that they follow, which basically is hankering after an apocalyptic war to bring a messianic figure called the Mahdi out in visibility and to conquer the world and make it all Islamic and so forth. So really they are trying to provoke a world war in order to precipitate that mythical period. And let's not forget that behind all of this, they're pursuing nuclear weapons, which everybody's forgetting about because we're distracted by Gaza, the Houthis, and now this.
Let's just bring in a statement that we've got from the Iraqi military. They're saying that the cities of Al-Qaim and the Iraqi border areas are being subjected to airstrikes by United States aircraft, as these strikes come at a time when Iraq is striving to ensure the stability of the region. These strikes constitute a violation of Iraqi sovereignty, an undermining of the efforts of the Iraqi government, and a threat that will drag Iraq and the region into unforeseen consequences, the consequences of which will be disastrous for security and stability in Iraq and the region. That's the Major General Special Forces, Yahya Messenger Abdullah. That's the very latest that we're hearing from Iraq. So certainly there, not a will to expand the conflict in the region.
But at the same time, they kind of allowed it to happen because they allowed Iranian-backed forces to come and operate within Iraq. And the current Iraqi government and administration isn't able to control its own territory. And so Iranians and rebels and militants of all different sorts around there. And there are many, many groups, ISIS, I can't remember the names of some of the others, but who believe in who believe in an apocalyptic end times coming soon, and they want to sort of get themselves ready for the second coming. And actually, they do believe Jesus is coming back, don't they? And he's going to rapture everybody, and they just want to get ready for it and to murder as many people as possible before they get there. And, you know, Iraq can't control its own territory, and that's partly because of the horrible conflicts that we've started in that part of the world. The whole place is an absolute mess.
But also, I mean, it strikes me, you quoted those remarks from Lloyd Austin that we don't want war with Iran. America is at war with Iran already via these proxy militia, and has been for a long time, America and its allies. This is already happening, and it's going to be escalated again and again by the Iranians, playing us for fools by using proxy militia, by pushing the envelope and just finding a point where the Americans will respond a bit but not too much, and all the time in the background pursuing nuclear weapons. They're very, very close to getting a nuclear bomb and only getting closer week by week. It's a real danger, and the longer that we go by without America taking the lead and actually confronting this enemy, the more dangerous it becomes.
And you think that can only be by them striking on Iranian
It has to be. It has to be. In the past, whenever that's happened to the Iranians, they have drawn back. America is many times more powerful than Iran in terms of its military, in terms of its economic size and its global weight. It has the advantage. President Trump knew that when he was in power. And I'm not a great fan of President Trump overall, but he knew that. And he acted upon it by killing Soleimani, and it had a good effect. But Biden needs to start to do the same to enforce a deterrent on the Iranians before it's too late.
Well, also, when they killed Soleimani, there was back-channel conversations between American and Iranian diplomats to say, we don't want to go any further with this, do we, boys? And everyone sort of backed down a bit. I don't think Iran's currently in that same place to have that same conversation. They're not remotely deterred. And unfortunately, the issue isn't really whether Iran has nuclear weapons. It's the fact they have nuclear power plants and the ability to have some fissile material, which is not enough to be a nuclear weapon. But if you were to go and have boots on the ground or have any kind of a strike on Iranian soil, the mess, the radioactive fallout and the waste that could come out from that could be hugely toxic for many tens of thousands of years. The West interfering in that part of the world has caused huge numbers of problems for centuries, but what you're going to see if Iran is allowed to carry on doing what it has been doing is exactly the kind of failed states, vicious wars, which drive immigration and drive political problems at home. It has to be something that we actually, as a world, as a planet, decide we're going to have to try and do something about. But unfortunately, the other superpowers, Russia and China, are not interested.
Well, let's just end with a line from the Secretary of Defence, Lloyd Austin, saying we do not seek conflict in the Middle East or anywhere else, but the President and I will not tolerate attacks on American forces. And Joe Biden saying tonight, if you harm an American, we will respond. We'll leave that there for this section. But coming up, pure evil. We'll discuss the sentencing of Brianna Ghey's killers dominating the newspapers. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, the Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface and Jake Wallis-Simons, editor of the Jewish Chronicle. I haven't got very much time in this section, but we are going to look at the Mail. It's also on the front of the Mirror, and there's a spread in the Times. The headline for the Mail, he stabbed Brianna because he hated trans people. She just wanted to kill for fun. This is a gruesome, gruesome tale.
Yeah, it's like something out of The Clockwork Orange, really. It's a really horrendous tale. Scarlett Jenkinson, they're both 16 years old, Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe. As the Mail said, he was motivated by some kind of transphobia and really seems like he was the follower in this. Scarlett Jenkinson seems to be the real ringleader. She tried to poison one of her schoolmates just months before she committed this murder with a cannabis sweet. She also tried to poison Brianna with an overdose of Nurofen before the stabbing, and she just did it all for some kind of grotesque fun and sadism. It's really an appalling story.
Yeah, and the Mirror also leading with that pure evil, their headline, Susie.
Yeah, I always have a problem with using that word because evil to me seems something that's somebody who's irredeemable, which I think a lot of people argue they're pretty close to it here, but also someone who is born and has no choice and just is going to do that, and there is no way around it, and it's predetermined almost, that it's beyond their control. I don't agree with that, and I think there's a piece inside the Times here which is talking about psychiatric assessments carried out on Scarlett. I mean, look, they're just a pair of spotty kids. They're a pair of spotty kids. And psychiatric assessment, apparently she's got a severe form of conduct dissocial disorder, one of the features of which is a lack of empathy.
You don't say.
No, you don't say. But children learn empathy at 1, 2 years old. You can see it coming out of them when they do start to recognise that someone else is hurting. And I'm not in any way excusing what she's done, but I'm interested to know what went so terribly badly wrong, because no one is born able to commit this kind of crime. It has to be something that happens as a series of horrific wrong turns that have...
So you saying that she's ill?
No, I want to know what's happened. I want to know what's caused
evil,
it,
what is?
in a way. Of course it's been... No, because even good and evil is like believing everything is to do with... It's predetermined by God and you can't get away around it. I do believe you have to be able to say that no one is born to commit this kind of crime, and it is possible to save people from committing that kind of crime.
Susie and Jake, thank you very much for taking us through the papers